Good morning. Welcome. Today we're going to talk about a lot of details on using some of the new Azure AI services that Microsoft has rolled out the last few years and building some real-life, actual, useful products for rolling out knowledge management and being able to answer typical questions and get you started for the first time on Azure Bot Service. If you haven't played around with this stuff yet, it's time to definitely take a look at it. So I'm glad that you're all able to make it here today, take some time out of a conference that provides so much content for you to digest and to take in. To get into the chatbot realm and the AI realm is really not as hard as it may seem. And the first reason you want to be looking at even going into this paradigm here is because of this sort of visionary statement here. We have Satya talking about the new UI layer. This is a new paradigm of how humans are going to interact with machines. It's no longer limited to just what can I text to something or how can I click a GUI and 15 clicks to get to that thing that I want to do. Moving forward, we have the opportunity here to take the way that we speak, the way that we communicate naturally, verbally, even with text in the sort of vernacular format. If you think about how you talk to your friends via text versus how you write an email, the formality level difference is significant. One could argue that the real language is what's happening in text message or when you tweet or when you post something on social media. And being able to dissect that, to parse it, to understand it and run with it is going to be that technology of tomorrow. So from a visionary standpoint, you'll see keynotes like Satya is talking about all of these options and where you can go with this. But it's not just about vision. So practically speaking, Microsoft has a number of good case studies out there if you want to see how people have put this technology to work today. It's not just something that we talk about. It's not just something that we think about and write a bunch of white papers on. These are actual in-place products in a number of organizations. So for example, Accenture in India has Deepa, which is a digital personal agent. Also, actually, it's the Hindi word for light, which is really helpful for brand awareness internally. It is currently being used by 180,000 employees in India, and that was rolled out on Azure Bot Service. Now, the 180,000 notable number, what really matters is the business outcomes, the 20% reduction of HR help tickets. This bot was specific for, or is specifically used for answering the commonly asked questions internally, find out how much time off they have left, what the policy is for pets, things like that. And the 2.6 million messages, while yes, as you get into this field, you'll notice that people like to test and poke and see what bots do. Once they start using it, that 2.6 million is a huge engagement level for that organization and saving them a ton of time when it comes to all of that repetitive task that you'd see within an HR department. A project that I worked on, which is with QnA Terminal 20, a shipping organization out of the Netherlands. The company that I worked for worked on this bot here where we were able to digitize and make as a natural language experience the paper-based process that they used for tracking shipments within Europe. Now, it might sound like, well, how come it's not been digital for the last 15 years? And actually, there is a legal requirement in Germany. Once you cross the border, you have to stay on paper as a records management requirement, but they were able to digitize it to the extent that they wanted it internally. And it ended up, for a few weeks worth of work building a bot, saving 2.5 FTE per year. So that's the real number here that we're talking about. That was built in Azure Bot Service. And then Progressive, if you know of Flo from the commercials, has her own Facebook page, and they built a witty, I will say, kind of cheeky chatbot for Facebook Messenger. And they are seeing millions of hits on this. This is a great lead opportunity, lead generation opportunity for them, in addition to being able to answer regular questions. So it kind of splits up the whole concept of asking questions and getting answers versus, hey, did you want to get a quote? I can bring you through that process. So today we're going to be talking about building a chatbot on Azure Bot Service and connecting it to QnA Maker. So QnA Maker is the knowledge tool within the Azure Cognitive Service stack. And my name is Matt Wade. I'm the VP of Client Engagement for AtBot. We build a no-code chatbot solution for the Microsoft Cloud. We connect a bot into Power Automate, the former Microsoft Flow. And feel free to follow me on Twitter. I'm also going to be live tweeting a bunch of details and resources throughout this session. So if you're on Twitter, even if you're not, you can search that hashtag BRK1037, and all the resources that you're seeing today will be posted there, as well as the slides for this session at the end. There were some updates made since I had to submit the slides back on Friday, so you'll want them from me probably, not necessarily the app. If you do know me, that's great, but most of you may not know me, but you might know me from some of my work, including the periodic table of Office 365. That being said, I'm not here to talk about Office 365. While people know me from that, my day job is actually within the bot service sphere. So let's actually jump into talking about architecture. So this session, I'm going to talk about some best practices, how you do things. I will be doing a lot of demos, and we're going to build through an actual bot in real time, presuming the internet works for me throughout the whole process and nothing breaks. But the architecture for any sort of AI is actually very important, and you're going to want to know this, ahead of time. Right now, that's probably what people think it is. But in reality, when you get into Azure, you're going to be talking about sort of this three-legged stool of a good chatbot. The thing has to understand what's coming into it, natural language processing, so NLP, that's our buzz phrase of the decade. It has to respond and either come back with a knowledgeable response or a small talk sort of response when somebody's asking it something that may not be all that relevant to what the knowledge base is. And you want to be able to go forward and kick off a process. So when you build the bot, you're using Azure Bot Service. Bot Service is where these bots live. A bot is nothing more than an app, and you're going to be building using the bot framework. That being said, I'll point out that I don't develop. I'm not a coder, if that disappoints you, sorry. I do build bots, though, on a regular basis. Like I said, the product that my company works on is a no-code bot, so I can actually build out the logic inherent to a good chatbot. But the knowledge is what we're talking about today, and that's something that literally anybody can use. I come from a knowledge management background. These services are outstanding. Such a great way to get people from point A to point Z without having to click through web pages or to find their way through a search, which is unpredictable. It's a really great new pillar within a modern KM business model, basically. So when you break these down, generally speaking, the understanding is going to be coming from one of the Azure Cognitive Services called LUIS. It stands for Language Understanding Intelligence Service. It is an equal to QnA Maker. LUIS is generally used as an input for taking information to kick off a process. QnA Maker is the knowledge base that your bot can be connected to. It also has natural language processing. Similar technology, not exactly the same as LUIS. LUIS is able to take almost like form entries, so I can tell somebody that I want to take vacation time tomorrow through next Thursday, and it will be able to parse vacation time off type, tomorrow start date, next Thursday end date. QnA Maker can't do that, so that's where the use case separation is very obvious and easy to kind of consider. So these are all right in Azure. Bot service is going to be through the Azure portal, but LUIS and QnA Maker are actually at their own websites. You do not have to have access to the Azure portal to have access to these services, which is a major, major win if you want to be rolling out chatbots and have them owned by the local lines of business. All right? How many of you have access to the Azure portal in your tenant? Raise your hand. Most of you. That is not representative of real people in the real world, right? So if you want to give the HR department the ability to build out these knowledge bases and have them be brought through as endpoints to a bot or into Microsoft Teams or even dropping them into SharePoint as an SPFX web part, you can totally do that kind of thing. And you don't have to manage the upkeep, the management, all of that stuff. It's just as easy as owning a very simple Excel spreadsheet, and I'll show you how. Now, when you get into building out the logic, which is not the topic today, this is something you're going to be coding, or you can look for other third-party services that provide different ways to build out what you want. But we're here to talk about QnA Maker today. So this is a really good example. What's the Wi-Fi password? Very common question. Maybe your Wi-Fi network changes every month with a new password to keep secure. So this kind of thing is really useful. IT doesn't have to answer the question if it comes in and you bring it to a bot. But the way people ask is not just going to be, what's the Wi-Fi password? They're going to say it however they think is the right way to say it. So you have all of these different ways to take the input and essentially think of it just like a search engine. QnA Maker is kind of a search engine on steroids because you can actually force the answer or come close to it, curate the responses that you want, and not just depend on search to do whatever it thinks is right. So you have a number of different potentially inputs here, and you want to be able to react to these. So what is this? just a list of phrases. That's all it is. So we made it into a nice tabular format. We can have our questions, and we can have our answer. One single source of truth for the answer. The content on the right is owned by the SME, the subject matter experts, and they can provide all of the inputs that are useful. So why don't we just make this into a web app? So that's QnA Maker. So this is an actual screenshot of building something just like that, all of the different ways that I can ask that same question, and here's that answer. And there's a lot more features that come with this, and you can build some really, really cool solutions. So today what we're going to do, I'm going to create a QnA Maker knowledge base in front of you, show you how that works. Then we'll build a bot based on that QnA Maker KB. I'll jump into some advanced KB features, some best practices, things like that, and we'll talk a little bit about deployment. So the first thing you need to know when you are going to create your first KB, this is not willy-nilly stuff. Think about it, plan it out. Anything in knowledge management or any sort of business process improvement really requires you to spend some time planning. This is a really good representative look at the life cycle of a chatbot. This is sort of specific to Azure because you do see some of the service names, but you can remove all the brands, and this is effectively a general way to have a life cycle for your bot. So you want to keep that at the front of your mind. So today we're going to do some building. We'll do some designing, I guess, de facto along the way. I'll show you how to do some testing. We'll publish our QnA KB. We'll get it connected to that bot, and we'll show you how it actually works. And you can actually do some testing here. There'll be some live demos for you there. So let's pretend that I'm the owner of Contoso Restaurants, and I want to make sure that my website has a chatbot on it because I get too many phone calls asking about reservations or being able to find the menu, things like that. And I want to make sure that I can get those people self-served because self-service is the way of the future, if not the way of the last decade, and push forward through that direction. So let's get into a demo to start with. I'm going to bring this over to my demo machine. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to QnAMaker.ai. I'm logged in currently under my account. This is what QnA Maker, the homepage, looks like. And I'm just going to click on this Create a Knowledge Base in the top. This is the Create Knowledge Base page. First thing you're going to have is a QnA service, which is an Azure service, essentially. So you do have to set that up first. I'm not going to take time away from this session to cover that, but that's something that's pretty easy to do. And all I have to do is choose my Azure directory ID, the subscription that I want, the service, which is that step one above, and the language. Now, right now, the language is stuck on English, but one of the features rolled out this week is multi-language support for QnA Maker. It'll actually support the language natively. Before, you could actually just have a QnA Maker database, and you just use the language you wanted because it really came up to the inputs that you provided were the way that it looked at it, but this has better language support now. So I'm going to give it a name. And the next option here is for extracting some information. I can actually pull some information from an existing website. I can upload a file. I'm going to skip that for now and talk about that a little bit later. The next thing is going to be called chit chat. So this is when somebody wants to give like a virtual knock on the door, which is all the time. People will say stuff to it just to test to make sure that it's real. So if you definitely want to have like the are you real, are you a bot, are you a human, that type of thing. But you have a number of different levels of professionalism here, which is really handy. I'm just going to go with friendly right now, and I can start my KB creation. So in a minute, this will load up, and I'll have a full long list of different inputs and the responses. This chit-chat part is really important, and one of the new things about chit-chat is that a number of other languages were rolled out. Not to belittle it or anything, but it's just kind of small talk, back and forth content. It's not technical at all, and it's all just coming from basically a spreadsheet. And it's really, really useful to have, though, because it just takes a long time to think about all these kind of things that people might ask it. I have a number of bots that are publicly facing, and we get a lot of questions like, why is the sky blue? We've made sure to have an answer for that and link back to like the Wikipedia article. It's kind of crazy what people ask. So I have all of these questions here you'll see. The source is listed here as this QnA Maker chitchatfriendly.tsv, and all the different options, all the different inputs here that would get that same answer are there. So please tell me if you're woman, girl, gender, sex. This is one of those pre-written answers. This doesn't really apply to me. So to get anything to happen, you have to save and train your bot. and once we save and train it, we can then test it. Every change that you make needs to be saved and trained, and it basically is going through a loop to reorder the importance and the responses that are coming. So let's ask this bot a question. If I zoom out a little bit here. There we go. So let's say, how are you today? I should get a response that's coming from the KB, and it came back with, I'm doing great, thanks for asking. That is a pre-written response coming from ChitChat, and I'm going to ask it how old it is. Totally irrelevant question for a bot, it doesn't matter how old it is. So I don't really have an age is a good response there. So let's do something a little bit more productive here, because we're a restaurant and we want to make sure that we can get information to our users. We can now add what's called a Q&A pair. So the question and answer will be listed here. You can see the section is called editorial. Editorial means that I am providing this information directly within the experience here. So let's add, do you host private events? And I'm just going to copy and paste a pre-written response here to save you the time. But do you host private events is not the only way to ask that question. So why don't I also add something like, can I reserve a room for a work luncheon? And I want to host my baby shower. And let's save and train that. And remember the phrases that I used that were input here, because I'm going to run through an example that uses not that phrasing. So let's go back into the test mode. You can see the test is still running here, and I'm going to say, can I reserve the event space for a private party? So I never said private party, right? I said private event, I said baby shower, I said things like that. And if I send this back to the bot, I should get back, we're able to host private events upwards of 70 people. Now, if you want to see how the score is working, you can click this inspect button. And this shows you the score that it's getting and how confident QnA Maker is on the response it's giving, which in this case, it's 73% confident. If any of you ever saw Watson on Jeopardy back in the day, it used to say it was 85% sure the answer was Shakespeare, it was 12% sure it was somebody else, and 8-9% sure of anything else. This is the exact same scoring thing, and the answer with the highest score will always come back. You can set a scoring threshold as well, so that only things above a certain threshold are going to get there. So let's jump back into here. Okay, so that's adding one question in here, and you can just keep adding as you feel necessary. But let's say I have a website. My restaurant website already has an FAQ. It's very useful. I'd like to just import that and reuse that content because it's already something that I've developed, and I shouldn't have to rebuild that kind of thing. So I have a website. On the bottom, I have a link to the FAQ. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the URL from here. I'm going to go back to QnA Maker, and there's an option under Settings. Once I actually save and train. Actually, I'm going to publish this first. The save and train process is different from publishing. Saving and training is sort of like staging, and then publishing is making it into production, just so you have a comparison there. And once this thing publishes, I can go in and I can make some of the changes to what the information is. So I'm going to go back to Edit Service now and bring me to my settings. Okay, so you can see under my settings that the already included information is that chit-chat and any editorial that I've added. I could upload a file, for example, a PDF, something like that, but I can also add a URL. So this is where I'm going to paste the URL name, click Add, and I'm going to click Save and Train because it's got to pull the information in and run with it. And once this runs, I'll now have three sources when I go into Edit. I'll have the editorial, I'll have the web page, and I can always add more web pages if I wanted to, and I'll have the chit-chat. So I'll just minimize the chit-chat, I'll minimize the editorial, and now you see all the questions are being pulled in. What it's doing is it's basically looking at the formatting of the page. Anything that's in a heading HTML tag, it's going to make that the question, and anything that's in paragraph, it's going to make that the answer. The same thing would happen if you had some sort of like a Word doc or a PDF, it'll do the same thing with the formatting. But let's say that you want to add some more questions here for the where you located, right? There's many ways to say that. So what's your address? How do I get to your restaurant? And then let's use our brain here a little bit. You can see the first question is where are you located, and the second question, this restaurant happens to be in Manhattan, you can take the subway. So that's the same kind of question, right? I can ask, how do I get there? What's the subway? Things like that. So why don't I add this, what is the closest subway station question here? And let me take this and paste it in here. And now I can just delete this question. So it covers all bases. So I'm going to save and train that. And then I'm going to ask it in a test, just so I can see what it looks like, what my answer for that would be. Now this reopened the minimize things here, but you can see I have a link. I'm using Markdown for a web-based bot, and this is going to show me some directions. So I'm going to say, can I get directions to your restaurant? And I should get back the response that I want. So if I click here, it should bring me to Bing Maps. I think this is the first time I've ever been to Bing Maps. And I can go and I get that information that I need. So I'll bring myself back to QnA Maker. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to publish this. And once the publishing is done, we'll have the opportunity to play with a little bit more. So the next thing is you're going to need a bot. You're going to have that endpoint, and for us, the bot is really going to be the place to go for it. There are other places, and I'll talk about those in a little bit. You have two options here. You can go in through the Azure portal and actually build the bot from scratch. It's just a web app, no big deal. But QnA Maker has a nice little wizard built right in, so I can actually just say, create the bot. Now, when it comes to deployment, you have some things to consider. The example we're talking about today is a restaurant. We're talking about a web-based page, and it's not going to be some sort of login or anything. But on the inside, chatbots essentially live in Microsoft Teams. They live or are created from Azure, but their endpoint mainly you're going to see through Teams. You can also drop it into any customizable web app, Dynamics, SharePoint, any other intranet, using something called Direct Line. This would be an authenticated experience. The bot knows who you are, has access to Microsoft Graph. It can know for an approval that requires your manager to pull the manager field from Azure Active Directory, all of that kind of stuff. Then you have external. Biggest use cases would be web pages, Facebook Messenger, SMS text message. You can actually deploy your bot as a skill for Alexa if you wanted to. So you have a lot of options there. But this is what the channel options look like in Azure. And I bring this up because I'm going to go through this page when we get there. So this is all part of creating the KB. But this is a one-time deal for the most part. We don't really have to do much of this once we're ready to continue with updating our bot. The bot aspect is going to be something that general users are not going to have access to. It's the KB that they're going to have access to and be able to do what they need to. So let's click on that Create Bot, and this is going to bring me into the Azure portal. And this is going to look very familiar to many of you. I'm going to give this a name. Let's call it Contoso Restaurants 2. And I can choose a bunch of stuff here, but it's already chosen for me because it's pulling that information from QnA Maker. Had I not done this wizard, I'd have to fill this in myself manually. I'm going to go with Node for my choices here, and I'm just going to click Create. Now, I'm going to get a notification in the top here that deployment is in process. It'll take a few minutes to get there. Once deployment is done, you're going to see your answers and stuff pop up in the choices that you have there. And let's see if I got this can take up to a minute or two. And what I'm going to do actually, because I want to make sure we're good on time. I want to show all slides here. This is a video, and let's see if I can pull through this slide. And I'm just checking my progress over here too. Sorry, I'll leave that there. All right, so we'll come back to the bot once deployment is done. And I do want to talk through adding onto your KB, because like I said, this is a KB session and not so much a bot session. You do want to build out your bot in a way that's going to be user-friendly, it's going to be proactive, it's going to help people do things before they knew they wanted to. So let's jump back to that first question that we had. What's the Wi-Fi password? Well, most organizations actually have more than one, right? They probably have a guest account, they probably have a visitor or vendor account, or a network, and they have one for employees. So this is real life, the kind of answer you'd have to give to that initial question that we had at the very beginning. In reality, we want to have a way to clarify. So QnA Maker rolled out a feature called multi-turn a number of months ago. It was probably one of the biggest upgrades to QnA Maker since QnA Maker came out, frankly, because now I have the option to have conversations fluidly, pre-populated, ready to go, and they are going to be able to guess and pull people along into a conversation with them. So I'm going to jump back into QnA Maker, and we'll show you how that works. So if I jump into my service, so I'm just back into the KB we started earlier, let's find the where are you located question. Let's say we're having some serious success, and we're opening multiple locations. So as a response for where are you located, instead of having this here, I'm actually going to respond with, we have 4 locations. Please select one from below. And this is where I have the option to add a follow-up prompt. So this is where that multi-turn concept comes in. So I can select this, and I can say something like directions to Denver location. And I have these pre-populated, and I can drop them in here. So it's going to ask me whether I want to make this as a new QnA pair. I am going to do that. And there's also a choice here for context only. I'll get into that in a little bit, but for now, let's just stick with it the way it is. And I'm going to add this to grab our answer here, drop it in, same thing. And you'll notice what's happening is they're actually creating a new QnA pair. This isn't just like some magic thing that only belongs below that other one that I created. This is a separate QnA pair, so if somebody asks specifically for directions to the Los Angeles location, they're going to get those directions because they said something close enough to it. And let's throw in 2 more real quick, and we'll do some tests on that. Click Save. Bring myself back down and add the last one. We haven't closed the New York location, so let's include that as well. And save. Okay, so let's save and train that. And then we're going to add a little bit more information and context to the New York location. So of course, New York has a lot of different ways to say it. How do I get to your Manhattan restaurant? Where is your NYC location? And I need directions to the New York restaurant. Right, because context matters here. People aren't going to use exactly what you say every time. So what I'm going to do is once this saves and trains, I'm going to test it, and I'm going to ask it and say, I want to zoom out a little bit here. And I need directions. Let me do a quick refresh, because I should have an option to show multi-turn in that test window, and I don't see it right now. Let's do one more test. This is why live demos are fun. So let me get this opened up on here so I can actually show you the video for it. So what happens here is there's going to be a test option at the bottom that says, let me use the multi-turn feature, which has worked 100% of the times except for right now. As of course, right, that would happen. So let me run through here. And this is actually a pre-recorded, and this is why I spent so much time pre-recording all these things. When you go in and you test and you say, where are you located? Because that is this video, correct? Yes, perfect. You see enable multi-turn at the bottom. Now it's asking me for directions, or which one that I wanted directions to. I can select, say, the New York location, and then click are the directions, or click to get directions to New York, and that'll bring it back up into a Maps app and show you exactly how to get there. So let's now talk a little bit more about, though, making the most of multi-turn. So this back and forth of being able to proactively pull people along is really important because the conversation needs to be actually fluid. One thing that you really have to keep in mind is that users can be a real pain in the butt when they just are given an open opportunity to ask anything that they want to. So try to minimize the ability for them to ask anything because they will try to break it. You all especially, people like us, we will definitely try to break it. So have some prescribed flows. Have them basically be scripts, almost written out step by step. And one way that I like to do that here is kind of sort of planning this stuff out. So let's run through one more demo here, and I'm going to stick with the video for this one. So what I'm doing here is adding some more follow-up prompts, and I mentioned earlier that there was an option for context only. So I want to provide the user the ability to see the menu. So if they find the directions to the New York or the New York restaurant, I want to be able to get them information about just specifically that location, because the menu in New York could potentially be different than the menu in Miami. So you'll see when I chose context only, it shows that up, and I can go through here and basically have a prescribed conversation where, hey, here are the directions to New York. Did you want to see the menu? Oh yeah, I do. Of course I want to see the menu. I'm going to click that. How about hours of operation? How about some other information about that? So you can totally do that. Very useful, and it's going to bring people along in a really good way. So if we test this out, we can ask where the Manhattan location is, and that gets us directly, because it's not context only, to the location, and then it provides that option to go off and do something else. So here's your information that way. When you start doing this, it's really important to think this out. And in this situation, think of it as locations, menus, and hours are some of the more hot topics. But this would be a lot more. You have a real big circle of potential questions that you want to be able to connect to. So we have 4 locations. We have 3 different hours, weekday, Sunday, Saturday. We have different menus, lunch, dinner, brunch. So you want to be able to connect these all together and be able to show off that connection and bring people along. This is not something that you need to spend a whole lot of time doing in maybe a mind mapping tool. Frankly, pen and paper is your best bet. So this is actually the thought process that I went through on how we would get these things connected. And then once you build it out and you know where it is, that's when I would say transition it into the technology. Because these things, human conversation is not a technology type thing. You really need to get the thought process out first and ready to go. So let's do one more demo here. And I'm actually going to run through this with, and I'll do this one live because I should be okay. Close this. I'm actually going to take a pre-written one, and actually this file, this pre-written KB is something that is a resource you'll see in the slides when you get them at the end. So if you want to recreate this, by all means, feel free. And I'm going to go into the settings for my KB. And I'm going to go down here to import knowledge base. Now, one thing that happens here is when you do import a knowledge base, it's going to overwrite the entire knowledge base as it exists. So this is a really good way to manage change. So if you need to make updates, you can have this thing saved in like an Excel spreadsheet and have certain owners of different topics, save those changes, and keep a running thing in, in SharePoint or someplace for making those updates. So I've now made this knowledge base. And I'm going to save and train it because I have changes. And let's go with showing you how the KB test will work. Let me drop back a little bit here and press play. Okay, so now I'm going to test this out. Again, I'm jumping back in here because I don't have that one checkbox in the bottom for enabling multi-turn, which again, only time that's ever happened. And I'm now going to go through an actual conversation, full-on conversation here. Is, hey, I want to get to the Miami location. I want weekday hours. I'd like to see the menu, I'm assuming. Oh no, because I already said I want directions. And then get my directions on the Maps app, show me my directions, get me there. Much better to drive to Miami from here than it is from here to New York, most likely. And after that, I can continue the conversation based on the inputs that I would be providing. So after that, I think I'll go forward and say I want to see the menu, and I can choose which menu that I want. And it kind of brings me around in this loop. So there is a way you can go through and make this a little slicker so that it's actually, it's not going to ask you questions that you've already asked before. And once I'm done here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to publish. Now let me show you the bot, because that was something we were waiting on before. If I go into my area here, I overdid my usage. I didn't pay you people. Oh, people from Microsoft just want my money. Let me run through the video for the channels for that, because I'm going to add this to my, my website. So let's just show you this here. So we did the first part. Let's zoom ahead a little bit, just so, yeah. All right, so to bring it back here, this is where I filled out the information about the bot. I'm going to click create, and then in a great world here, 73 seconds later, this gave me a bot. And the fields that I have to fill out are all pre-connected. The QnA Maker KB is connected, and then I can start playing around with the features and the settings that I want for that bot, and they're all good to go. So a little while later, I get to open this bot up, and the bot's going to have lots of options. So I'm going to go through and show you the configuration here, where the three pieces of data, the auth key, the endpoint host name, and the knowledge base ID, those three pieces of information are required from anything in QnA Maker to get connected to your bot. But then, of course, you want to test it. So you can test this in web chat, right in the bot experience, and I can ask it a question, just like I did at the very beginning. How are you doing? I should get the I'm doing fine response back. And then we'll do the same test again, just like at the very beginning. I'm looking for, I'm looking for the menu. That is an updated piece of information, right? So now let's go back into channels, though. So channels is the thing I was talking about earlier about where you can deploy to. So the first one that's going to always be available is web chat, and this is where you can get an iframe to just drop onto your website. So you do have to provide the secret key from above in that URL, but after that, you're good to go. Another option would be Teams, direct line, things like that. So I can just enable Teams here, and then I can just sideload that bot into Teams so it's available to your organization. You can also add it to your Teams app store so they can install it themselves. Another nice thing is you can customize the bot, so you can change the name, you can upload an icon, so let's give it a little bit of branding. I think that's important. And from this point forward, you'll now see that C for Contoso Restaurants as the representative brand. The other one that I would generally add is direct line, which is sort of web chat plus, so you can do a lot more things with that and get it connected to things, which is very, very good. But let's bring it back to deployment, okay? So when you are going to deploy this, some sort of touchy-feely must-haves, make sure that you have a good name. Make sure it's on brand, it makes sense, it can be clever, witty, whatever you want. Make sure it has a welcome message. You can use adaptive cards and welcome cards as a way to get people to notice that they're being brought in. Provide a help message, so if they say help or some other term that is a saved term for people getting support, there is a response. And then the default message is for the situation where the bot doesn't recognize what's incoming from the user. So make sure you have those all done. But the big thing is make sure that your bot actually has a little bit of personality. It has an experience that the person's going to have is positive. And I know that for many of us, that's a little bit more touchy-feely than we like. So if you're getting a little bit itchy, just talk to your marketing department. They'll help out. And let's jump right into the website. So actually, if you all want to check this out, you can. It is at contosorestaurants.com/bot. And I'm going to go there right now. And for anybody from Microsoft, I'm going to put this website up for bid soon, so you guys can use this for your demos too. But I changed my website around a little bit, and I just dropped in the not sexy at all, didn't do any CSS or any styling, but here is my bot. So I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to say hello to kick that bot off. Now, a lot of websites you'll see will have a little pop-up on the bottom right. I wanted to make this front and center, right? Come to my chat, talk to me, because I don't really want you to do anything but talk. So I have a nice little welcome card here, and welcome to Contoso Restaurants, this whole experience. So I can go through that, see our menu, and this is essentially the exact same experience here as I showed in the demo, or in the QnA Maker experience, but this is real. This is where people would see it. So if you want to check this out yourself, you totally can. So I can say I want directions to Miami, and I'll get that link to open up Bing Maps, and I'll be good to go there. Okay, so there are other options though, and I'm going to take a bit of a risk here, but this should be kind of cool. If you want to play along, by all means, feel free. QnA Maker is available through a number of different integrations, one of those being through the Power Platform. So if you would like to, pull out your phone right now, and you can email this email address here, ignite@jumpto365.com, and the subject line has to be #QnA. Ask any of these style questions, and all of you guys taking pictures, seriously, do it right now. It's actually pretty cool. Open up your email, send the message to this, and it will go through, and it will respond back to you with whatever the QnA Maker response was based on that question. So the actual behind the scenes, one of the changes I had to make here was the Power Automate name, is the incoming email. It gets converted from HTML directly to text, and then it's going to send whatever that text was directly to QnA Maker. Now, if you do send the email, try to not have your signature. That does play with it. This is not a fully robust solution or anything like that. And then in the response, I'm going to send back the answer to it, and you'll get a link to the slides. You'll get a link to the KB, if you wanted to use that. You'll get a link to the flow, this actual flow I have saved up there, and you'll have a link to it so you can use it yourself. And you'll get some responses this way. So again, take a minute. If you want to check this out, you can see a response right now. And I think it's a pretty cool example of how else you can be rolling this stuff out. So if you want to do customer service and you have an email address that everybody uses, you could set a confidence score minimum of maybe 75% for when somebody asks a question, run it through. If it's higher than 75, automatically answer it. If it's not, run it through an approval to the person that would own that information, connect it to ServiceNow, connect it to another IT system, anything like that. Really, really cool opportunities there. Oop. Come on. There we go. All right, so that is essentially what I wanted to talk about with QnA Maker. There is a lot to logic, something you want to look into next. Like I said, Lewis is going to be the place to go to get logic kicked off. The differences between QnA Maker and Lewis are essentially the knowledgeable type question on the left and the I want to go do something type question on the, or type input on the right. So you can see on the right side, Flight 234, when does that depart from Chicago to London? You now have pieces of input, Flight 234, Chicago, London, all those types of things. That would kick off a workflow. So that's why we're not talking about that today, because this was all about just the knowledge aspect. But really your takeaways here should be that building out a knowledgeable bot really isn't that hard. And this whole new UI layer, this new paradigm of human interaction with machines is not just a fad. It's going to be the way that we move forward, especially generationally speaking. I'm 33, and sometimes this stuff, I still have to force myself to use it. But man, if my little cousins don't love their Alexa and their Google Home and all these things that just respond to whenever they want them, that's going to now be an expectation both from a customer service standpoint and internally at organizations. So make sure you're planning for the future and going forward that way. So to close out, I do want to provide you some resources. The first one is a sort of version of the periodic table that is for Azure Cog Services. So this has a listing of all the different cognitive services, how they're connected, speech to text, text to speech, auto-translate. Some of the coolest ones are vision, the ability to identify what's in an image based on just a photo or a live feed from your camera. And just a shameless self-plug, tomorrow morning, if you're interested, if you're up in time after the celebration tonight, I'm going to be hosting one of those unconference sessions, basically a fancy word for workshop. Feel free to come by in the hub. The wait list is full right now, but stand by. I'm sure will be very much available for the people that don't show up because they had a little bit too much fun tonight at Universal. And at that point, I also want to make a mention very quickly here that If you have questions about QnA Maker, about bot service, best practices, case studies, ways to show off to your management that this is something that they should be looking into, you can always reach out to me. But I would also like to point out that we have Tulsi Menon here from the QnA Maker product team. She is the product owner for QnA Maker, so she's in the front here. Feel free to stop her, give her your card, grab hers, do all the contact stuff that you want, and have fun with this. So at that point, I'm going to open it up for questions. I have a few minutes, and feel free to ask away. Outside of that, you can get the handout here at the link on the right side, and you'll be good to go. So actually, I'm hitting my time, so I'm going to do questions down here afterwards, and thank you all very much for coming. Have a great rest of your night.